Hey everyone, welcome to this tuning quickie on front-wheel drive builds for Forza Horizon 5. If you aren't familiar with the tuning quickie series from Horizon 4, these guides move pretty quick and don't dive too far into the details because I've usually covered the topics elsewhere. These videos are all about getting you the info you need to know as quick as possible. So, with that said, let's jump in. Front-wheel drive, from a competitive standpoint, is best in A-class and below, and usually excels on circuits where handling takes priority over power. Let's look at building a car with this 97 Honda Civic, a very strong B-class choice. The goal here is all about maximizing front tire grip. So front aero, even on B-class, is pretty helpful, and on lower classes, it barely costs any PI. Sometimes it even drops it. Also, it's totally a myth that front-wheel drive cars don't need rear aero. They do. And on top of that, the adjustable rear aero often drops PI as well, so you should usually take it. Your tire compound will be key. Even on low-class cars, big compound upgrades like semi-slicks or even slicks can be worth it. You can also experiment a bit here by trying rally tires or even drag tires in some builds, which will give you some pretty unique handling characteristics, but can allow you to fit some more upgrades while being still fairly grippy. Tire compound is, in my opinion, the most important upgrade to play with and dial in for front-wheel drive. You should absolutely max your front tire width if possible too. Remember, front-wheel drive builds are all about maximizing front grip, and it usually doesn't hurt to increase your rear width either. It's usually free or drops PI due to the added rim weight, but having the extra grip in the rear will keep it in check around corners and prevent you from having to correct. For rim weight and size, honestly, I focus on style over everything, but generally, bigger, heavier wheels tend to be more PI efficient. For what it's worth, I often run lightweight wheels to shave off some unsprung weight and improve handling, and because they look better. If you have wheel spacing options, prioritize front track width, and you can widen rear if you need to reduce body roll or increase rear grip. Drivetrain mods are pretty independent of anything front-wheel drive specific. If you play on auto, these will be more valuable, but for manual and manual with clutch players, the clutch and transmission upgrades are somewhat less important. Also worth mentioning here that the sport transmission often drops PI while lowering shift times as well. You may just need to tweak your final drive. For platform and handling, since front-wheel drive builds are often circuit-focused, it's worth it to upgrade brakes. Just don't overdo it and waste PI. Now, in Horizon 4, for whatever reason, rally suspension seemed to work really well on front-wheel drive cars. I personally have not noticed that to be the case in Horizon 5, though. Race suspension seems to maintain grip better, so that's what I always run. Chassis reinforcement can actually help quite a bit here, but the full cage is usually overdoing it. We'll touch on this one later though. And weight reduction, if you can fit it, is pretty much always a strong choice. And from there, just fill out your power. Alright, let's talk tuning, starting with the differential, which is the key factor in determining corner exit understeer. Realistically, a low diff lock should maintain grip better and pull you out of a corner without understeer. However, the main physics tweak in Horizon 5 that makes the game less of a sim and more towards arcade is the fact that it allows you more front tire grip while trying to brake or accelerate during cornering. This can be exploited to a point in front-wheel drive by increasing diff lock near 100%. You'll often still be able to maintain enough grip to let your power pull you through the corner without inducing understeer. Now, front-wheel drive builds are really the only place I strongly suggest playing with your brake tuning. Even though Horizon does let you put a lot of force on the front tires, it can still be best to move some bias towards the rear in some builds to leave some grip for cornering. Test your braking distance to make sure you aren't sacrificing much, but moving a bit of your force towards the rear can help you on corner entry. If you're comfortable with trail braking though, moving too much bias to the rear can restrict your ability to trail brake. You can probably guess where I'm going with front aero. On circuit builds, this should be high. Rear aero is a great tuning tool, so let's take a look at what it can do. If your rear end is sliding out too much, it'll start to pull you out of your corner, forcing you to correct, which in front-wheel drive costs you a lot of time. You really want to be able to turn in and stay in your corner. In transitions, a loose rear end can introduce snap oversteer as well. Chassis reinforcement, rear tire width, and pressure and rear aero are some of the key factors in fixing this. You can overdo it though and cause understeer. You actually want the rear to push out just a bit. It helps point the car into the corner, so damping should be your final tweaking tool to dial in the front to rear grip balance. Increasing front damping or lowering rear will reduce snap oversteer, but promote some understeer. So if you aren't having issues with the rear end sliding out, then decrease front or increase rear damping to push more suspension grip over the front tires. Spring stiffness is often quite balanced out of the box. I wouldn't play with this unless you need to, and I always drop ride height to lower center of gravity and get those extra style points. Sway bars are another great tuning tool. If you like softer suspension setups, running low or no front ARB can give you a lot of front grip, and stiffening rear can help reduce body roll and keep you locked into the corner. The whole minimum front, maximum rear ARB strategy is usually attributed to meta tuning and stretching the game's physics, but in front-wheel drive, it's actually pretty realistic. I've seen plenty of front-wheel track cars with no front sway bar and huge rears. Alignment, as always, is pretty important, but follows the same rules as any of my other guides. For camber and caster, just make sure your inside tire temp averages about 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the outside. Now, front toe is going to play a big role in your cornering feel. A few fractions of a degree here can heavily alter your cornering ability, so make sure you test this. I usually fall somewhere between 0.1 and 0.3. Gearing is another setting very independent of anything front-wheel drive related, and we've covered it elsewhere. So finally, we come to tire pressure. Set your front pressure higher than your rear if it isn't already. This will help with turn-in. Then you generally want to drop pressure a bit, depending on your compound and your vehicle's weight. Lower pressures can improve the grip feel, but too low will cause your tires to overheat faster, so take a few laps and make sure you aren't getting too far into the yellow or orange heat zones when cornering. And that's about it for tuning. I'll leave you with some final driving tips for front-wheel drive here. Like I said throughout the video, making sure you can stay turned into your corner is key in front-wheel drive. If you can't corner without correcting, you need to adjust the tune. If it helps to practice, turn on that racing line or at least braking line to help gauge braking distance and aim for your apex, which by the way is often where the inside checkpoint flag is on a race. Also make sure you aren't getting on the throttle too early or too hard. Make a habit of not touching the gas until you hit your apex, because with most front-wheel drive builds, you'll start to straighten and understeer out of the corner if you're too hard on gas too early. If you need to make mid to late corner corrections, it can be helpful to apply light brake while on throttle to simulate a bit of left foot braking to keep you in your corner. And if you're comfortable with trail braking or want to learn, it can be a great tool to improve your cornering. This works best with a heavier front brake bias. You want to brake for your corner and then ease off but maintain some light braking pressure during your turn-in. This keeps weight over the front tires, increasing grip and turn-in ability. Then by the time you hit your apex, you should be off the brake and start to apply some throttle. This is effectively impossible on keyboard, but you can manage it with a good braking control on a controller, or of course with a wheel and pedals. Don't worry too much about trail braking though, unless you already feel confident in your other driving abilities and just want to push yourself that little bit farther. Alright everyone, hope this video helped you build for front wheel drive. I'll see you in the next one.